Okay, we're ready to resume the proceedings, and we're at the point where Attorney Flanagan has some questions for the town manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Lyman, I asked you to look at your March 31st letter to Thomas O'Toole.
Yes.
And this is ultimately the crux of this entire hearing. I mean, this is outlined 7 violations, 7 alleged infractions. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right, so the first infraction you indicate is improper management of licensed premises in violation of MGL 13823 on January 6, 2017. Can you explain how, with specific particularity, how Mr. O'Toole's Pub violated that provision?
Yes, there was no manager present.
There wasn't a manager present. Okay, and that's in a violation of Chapter 138, Section 23?
Yes.
Okay, what part of that statute says a manager has to be present?
I don't have the statute in front of me, but I could certainly bring it forward if you wished.
So your testimony is you believe that Chapter 138, Section 23 of the statute has provision that a manager has to be present?
Yes.
The Massachusetts statute?
Yes.
Okay. And you think that you can find provision in that that says a manager has to be present at all times in Massachusetts of every pub?
Yes. It's in the ABCC rules and regulations as well.
If you could provide that to the board, and I understand that you don't have it at your fingertips, but before they make a decision, I'd like the board to consider that, whether that's in that statute or not. In terms of the manager at all times, you looked at the rules and regulations, and do you have a copy of the rules and regulations?
Not with me.
I can give it to you.
You're talking about our rules and regulations, correct?
Yes. I actually gave Chief Benton a copy. I have it. Thank you. So what I'm inquiring about is page 3, well, page 2 into 3, supervision and presence of licensee,
Yes.
where it talks about a manager being present at all times. And I understand that, and Chief Benton did recite that in his testimony. And then there's a paragraph that talks about 4 on-premise liquor licensees. Take a minute to read that if you'd like.
I see it.
Okay, so it's fair to say that that says that the manager has to be on the premises for more than 40 hours per week. Is that correct?
Yes.
So in the paragraph before says a manager has to be on premises 100% of the time, all the time, correct?
No, it doesn't. It says
doesn't,
a duly authorized manager or principal representative.
Okay, so is it your testimony that a manager has to be on premises 100% of the time or more than 40 hours per week?
It is my belief that a manager must be on site at a minimum 40 hours per week, but on those times when a manager is not present, an alternate person with managerial responsibilities should be present.
How is that paragraph, the second paragraph, for on-premises liquor licensees, how does that correlate to your testimony that there has to be a duly representative? Does that duly representative have to be there 40 hours per week?
That would be splitting hairs and foolish. What Section C says, and Section D further appends it, is that a manager or responsible person must be on site. If the manager isn't there, then someone else designated to be responsible as manager should be there. That's the way I read it, that's the way I interpret the rules.
Okay, so you're indicating that a manager has to be there 100% of the time, but somebody at least has to be there more than 40 hours per week.
No,
Okay, well,
no, I'm
explain it
not.
to me then.
You know, You just said the manager has to be there 100% of the time. Let's not split hairs. The manager has to be there at least 40 hours, and someone in a managerial responsibility should be there at all times. So if the manager is not there, then a designated representative would be.
Okay, so why put in that provision for on-premises liquor license, have to be there 40 hours per week? Why even have that provision if someone has to be there at all times?
Because we're making it clear that the manager has the responsibility to oversee the facility, but that may not be practicable for someone to be there 100% of the time. So those people that are not going to be there 100% of the time are at least going to be there 40 hours per week.
Okay, so what you're saying is this provision, which doesn't say that, by the way, if it does say that, point it out to me. But that's your interpretation of that.
That is correct.
Okay, but it's fair to say that doesn't say what you're testifying here today.
I believe it does.
You do? Well, show me where it says that.
If you insist, I will again read Section C.
Okay, I'm asking you to clarify the next one, which isn't part of Section C, for the last paragraph.
I
Clarify
understand.
that.
I disagree with you. I believe that the last paragraph further stipulates conditions for management. And I'm not going to say to you that it doesn't, because I believe it does.
Okay, but I'm saying, I understand your interpretation. I'm asking you where it says that. Because it speaks for itself.
It doesn't
What
say
the
that they
selectmen
have
can
to
read.
sell grain alcohol. It doesn't say that they have to sell 2% beer. The license allows people to sell alcoholic beverages and sets rules under which they're sold.
So you're in charge of collecting the information for the managers of all the pubs and bars and liquor establishments and Whitman,
Yes,
is that correct?
our office collects that data for all licensees.
Okay, and how do you collect that data?
Licensees are required to renew their license every year. A form is completed up until 2016 that requires them to restate the name, address of the business, the license number, and who the designated manager is. As a result of what's occurred here in March, we decided to reach out to all of our licensees to ensure that everyone has a management representative at all times.
In March or May?
May, I'm sorry.
In May. So let's get to that. So your May 24th, 2017 letter is basically you asking for a manager for O'Toole's Pub and him to designate that. And did Mr. O'Toole comply?
He did.
Okay. And this incident, when a violation, your alleged violation, he didn't have a manager on duty, was prior to you sending out this May
That's
24th.
correct.
So you never ever sent out a form letter or a letter for O'Toole's Pub for him to designate a manager or principal representative prior
No,
to
the
that?
license requires that.
Did you ever send out a letter to Mr. O'Toole or any other establishment asking for their managers?
We have on file for every licensee an application and a form that's submitted to the ABCC in which they designate who their manager is. So every one of our alcoholic beverage licensees has a form in their file that designates a manager.
I understand that. When did you give notice to the establishments in Whitman about this provision?
Every year.
Okay, do you have a copy of a letter you sent to O'Toole's Pub asking for his manager, or any of that, of what you're
No,
testifying to?
Matt, you may have the copy of the application he signed in which he represented himself to be the manager.
I'm getting confused here.
Sure.
I have a copy of the rules and regulations and enforcement policy for the licensing of alcoholic beverages sales in the town of Whitman, which you have.
Yes.
The last page, been signed by somebody from O'Toole's Pub, and the date is April 27th, 1916.
I'm aware of that.
So, okay, so I don't know.
This,
Where you're
Mr.
going.
Chairman, this is a May 24th, 2017 letter, long after this incident, asking O'Toole's Pub to designate their manager for the rules and regulations. The O'Toole's Pub has never
That's the
received,
first time that they were.
first time
Is
that he's
correct?
had notice.
That's the first time all licensees were asked to provide alternate
Alternates.
managers. Alternate managers. This
All
is
right.
not asking who the manager of O'Toole's is. He already signed that when he submitted his application
So
for the license.
Okay, is there a form? There has to be a form, because there's a form now in May. Was there a form prior to this incident for O'Toole's Pub to establish? That's my question, Mr. Lyman.
No,
But that's
because
what-
we relied on the ABCC's documentation representing that they had a manager, and the manager was Tom O'Toole.
Okay, I understand that. Did you?
Can you
send-
clarify this for me?
I hopefully can. 2 points. One, as part of a supplemental production of documents, the town, excuse me, town did supplement those exhibits that have been identified as exhibit number 8 in the documents that have been previously provided. As part of that packet, the town provided the notices that the town received from the ABCC, both for 2015 as well as in 2016, whereby O'Toole's Pub identified Mr. O'Toole as the sole manager of
Okay.
O'Toole's Pub. So that's the purpose of providing that to the board as well as to Mr. O'Toole, because by Mr. O'Toole's own representation, he has identified him as the manager. It is not, the other document that is provided is subsequent in time to this incident that brings us here tonight. And at that point, Mr. O'Toole identifies a variety of other individuals as alternate managers. But to the point that Mr. O'Toole was never put on notice as the requirement, I will turn your attention once again to the first paragraph of section C of the rules and regulations that mandates that the full-time residential address, business, and home telephone numbers of manager and representative must be on file with the licensing authority. That creates a clear responsibility on the part of the licensee to provide that information. And if Mr. O'Toole had read the rules and regulations, I would argue that he would have been put on notice that he was under an obligation at all times to keep the town current as to who the manager is and or any licensed representative. But the only information before the town at the time of this incident was information indicating that he is the sole manager. And that's the only pertinent or relevant fact tonight.
Thank you.
Who is in charge of collecting that information?
Our administrative assistant.
Did your administrative assistant collect information from every establishment in Whitman of who the principal representative or manager is, and everyone prior to you sending out this May 24, 2017 notice?
Yes, because it would be part of their license renewal.
So,
Everyone has to provide the name of the manager.
okay, but that manager obviously can't be there all the time, correct?
No.
Not
We
correct?
actually have a licensee who is the sole manager and is in presence whenever the facility is open.
Okay,
To
but there's
sell
some
alcohol.
establishments where that's
There are
impossible.
some that can do that, but
Okay.
it's impossible to expect everyone would be available every hour or stores.
But so it is impossible for them.
It's not practical. let's put it that way.
I agree with you, I agree, it's not practical. It's not practical to have an establishment, have a manager there all the time. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Okay, so you don't have any documentation to provide that you have other establishments in O'Toole's Pub which have managers on all the time, designated for every single day, every hour they're open? You don't have that information, do you?
Restate the question.
Sure. You don't have information from other establishments that identify every single time period that that establishment is open. Most bars are open, maybe, let's just say noon to 1 in the morning. You don't have that for any of the establishments where they say, our manager from noon to 6 is this person, and then from 6 to close is this person. You don't have that information, do you?
That is correct.
Okay. And the crux of this is, Mr. O'Toole was the manager on duty. He testified that he was on his way to, he talked to Chief Benton, he said he was on his way to the establishment. So, was he there? We stipulate that he was not there at 8:54 when this incident happened, but he was on the way, and he was the manager on duty.
We didn't stipulate, we stipulated to the fact he was not there. We didn't stipulate.
That's what I said, he's not there.
But
That's
then
what
you
we stipulated
continued
to.
by saying, but he was on his way. But we didn't stipulate.
No,
that he-
what I said was the testimony of Chief Benton said Mr. O'Toole told him he was on his way. And he did show up later on, I'm not sure exactly the time, he's gonna testify, but he did show up, so the manager on duty did show up on that night.
The manager on duty that night was not present when the altercation occurred. And that's the crux of the problem, and that's why we're here tonight.
Right. And you indicated in your testimony it's impractical for a manager to be on duty at all times in the establishments in Whitman. Is that correct?
No, it is impractical for one person. If Mr. O'Toole chose not to be there and not have anyone representing management there, that's his decision.
Okay.
But that leaves the facility not managed.
Okay. In your March 31st letter, which outlines the 7 alleged allegations, infractions, you talked about 2. Can you explain 3? It's duplicative, isn't it?
It might be considered redundant depending on how you look at it.
I'm asking you how you look at it.
I'm looking at it in the sense that I am specifying in each item what I believe the violations to be.
Okay. But number 2 and number 3 are generally saying the same thing.
You could conclude that.
Thank you. Number 4, permitting a disorder, disturbance, illegality in violation of 204 CMR. Can you describe what way O'Toole's Pub violated that provision?
By permitting the disturbance to occur.
And how did they do that?
Based on the information that was presented at this hearing, it is clear that an altercation developed prior to the assault. And if someone had been on site in a managerial capacity, noting that was developing, it could have been addressed because no one was there.
It's a question
In
of
my
foreseeability,
opinion,
right?
it wasn't addressed.
Okay. It's a question of foreseeability, right?
Yes,
And you read the decision in 2015 from the ABCC, which maps out foreseeability, correct? And you read
I did.
And you read some of the cases that basically tell you and tailor-made what foreseeability is in a pub? in
well,
terms of
you
its
may feel
disturbance?
that that case is on point with this. I may not necessarily agree with you.
You were asking this witness for some type of legal analysis or conclusion?
So, in terms of foreseeability, do you feel this was foreseeable?
Based on the testimony I heard and the report I've received, I believe the incident of assault was foreseeable.
In relations to the case law in the Massachusetts?
I'm not going to address the case law.
Okay.
I don't hold a license to practice law, and I'm
That's,
not going to give you
that's
a
fine,
opinion.
that's fine. Number 5, failure to call immediate police assistance as necessary to protect patrons. Can you explain that, please?
If you feel it needs an
Yeah,
explanation.
I do, yes. There's 7 allegations, I'd like you to go
You
through.
had a situation develop where hostilities occurred. It became necessary to separate the two parties. The parties came together again, and one struck another, yet no one from O'Toole's notified the police that there was an assault in progress, whether an assault had occurred.
The police
We had a-
were called, correct?
Not by O'Toole's.
The police were called, correct?
The police were called by a patron.
Okay, so the police were called. Why would O'Toole's Pub have to call the police again? Do
If
think
you
it's
want to tell me
necessary?
how O'Toole's Pub knew that call was made, maybe we could get into that.
You'll find
It's
out in the
O'Toole's
testimony. You'll find out in the
responsibility.
testimony.
It is O'Toole's responsibility to communicate with the police.
Is your testimony today that if O'Toole's Pub knows somebody called the police, that they are to call the police in addition to that call? Is that what they're supposed to do? Is that what the rules and regs want?
The rules and regs want to demonstrate that the licensee is aware of what's going on in the facility and notifying the police when there's a problem.
If the police were already called does O'Toole's Pub's employees have to call the police?
I would say yes, because I don't know how anyone would know that that call was actually made. Oh, I'm calling the police. Okay, then I don't have to worry about it. Doesn't work that way. Responsibility lies with the licensee.
In the ABCC ruling that I provided a copy to everybody, everybody has that, and it's also an exhibit. You know, let you look at our copy. I highlighted it for you on page 10. You can just read that. You can read as much as you want. You can read the highlighted version. And that's my only copy, because I gave every copy to the selectmen, so look at that. Could you read it out loud, the highlighted version, please?
Furthermore, when the license manager, Mr. O'Toole, learned of the incident, a 911 call had already been placed. The commission determines that the licensee did not commit this violation.
Thank you. If the record could reflect that that's in there, and then to, from the previous case.
Was he on scene and acting as the manager at that point?
I'm sorry?
Was Mr. O'Toole on the premises?
No,
that he
there was no requirement of a manager at this time.
No, during that case there.
During this case, no,
He wasn't there, he just,
he wasn't there. The employees, there was an allegation that they didn't call 911, but a 911 call had already been placed, and the board is basically saying, why would O'Toole's Pub's employees call 911 if a 911 call has already been placed? I'm just asking you to consider it. I'm asking you to read it in its entirety, if you would. And number 7, Mr. Lyman, it's basically something we talk about in number 4, correct? So that's duplicative as well?
It further describes what I believe to be the issue in number 4.
And in this letter, May 24, 2017, you felt it necessary, you signed that letter, correct? And you wrote that letter? May 24, 2017, something I asked you to look at the break?
I was aware of the letter. My secretary signed it on my behalf, which is indicated by her initials.
You read it, and it's your representation, correct?
Yes.
And you felt it necessary in paragraph 2 to talk about, in addition, the manager must be on the premises either 50% of the time the premises are open, or 40 hours per week during operational hours, whichever is less. You felt
Yes.
it necessary to let O'Toole's Pub know on May 24, 2017, that that is the rule in the rules and regulations,
We're
correct?
restating the issues that are in the rules and regulations, correct?
I appreciate that. I have nothing further, thank you.
Couple of brief questions. Sure. Mr. Lyon, when well, first of all, we began by asking whether or not the notice to O'Toole's Pub that you were asked to refer to earlier, dated 3/31/2017, was that supplemented by a later notice to O'Toole's Pub?
Yes.
Was that supplemented by another notice to O'Toole's Pub dated July 31st, 2017?
Yes.
And did you restate the allegations with greater specificity, outlining not only the facts, but also the possible violations resulting
Yes.
from those facts?
Let's just be clear, that letter was not to O'Toole's Pub, that letter was to me.
Was that notice at the request of counsel for O'Toole's Pub?
Yes.
And was it at the request of O'Toole's Pub's counsel for the purpose of allowing them to respond in any public hearing to the allegations set forth in your original notice?
I believe so.
Okay. And that letter has been provided to the selectmen, correct?
Yes,
And in your opinion, that describes a complete and detailed description of all of the underlying facts and violations, correct?
yes,
And in citing chapter 138, Attorney Flanagan asked you for some legal analysis and, but simply, let me ask you, is it your understanding that the town's licensing authority derives from chapter 138?
yes,
And does Mr. O'Toole's obligations as the licensee also derive from chapter 138?
yes,
And does chapter 138 require that Mr. O'Toole comply with all state and local rules, regulations, and laws?
it does.
And so in citing O'Toole's Pub for a violation of chapter 138, was it your intent to capture any violation of any of those provisions of either local or state law?
Yes,
Okay. And you were again asked about section C of the rules and regulations, and there was a spirited discussion about the two separate paragraphs. One requiring a certain amount of time being spent on the premises by Mr. O'Toole, the other requiring a manager or licensed representative to be present at all times.
yes,
Does Mr. O'Toole satisfy the first paragraph of section C simply by being on the premises 50% of the time?
no,
And at the time of this incident, had Mr. O'Toole, as required by the rules and regulations, identified any other manager or licensed representative?
no,
And was he on notice at the time of this incident, according to the rules and regulations, that he was required to do so?
yes, if not covering 100%.
What's the importance of having a manager on the premises?
It is presumed that a manager who's trained to operate a licensed liquor facility would be aware and prepared to deal with issues that may come up to and including hostile actions in the facility. Manager would be the person responsible for ensuring order is kept. Manager would be the person responsible for ensuring that if assistance is needed, that a call is placed to the local police department in order to ensure control. And if an incident occurs, it's the manager's responsibility to immediately notify the police.
So the manager, in the absence of the licensee, is obligated to ensure compliance with all town rules and regulations.
Yes.
And is there any requirement, again, there was a spirited discussion, is there any requirement that Mr. O'Toole be there 24/7 during hours of operation?
No.
In terms of the phone call that wasn't made, was that the obligation of a patron or pursuant to the rules and regulations? Was that the clear responsibility of O'Toole's?
It is the responsibility of O'Toole's Pub.
Attorney Flanagan read from an ABCC decision that goes back a couple of years. At the time that the ABCC decision was rendered, did the town have any rule or regulation that specifically required that O'Toole's Pub report directly the incident that
No.
occurred on January 6th? So that decision predated the rules and regs adopted by the town.
Correct.
So I have at this point.
That's further. Okay. Get somebody else?
Yes, please. I'd like to call Brian Bonner to the stand, please. Mr. Bonner, could you state your name, spell your last name for the record, please?
Brian is the Bonner, B-O-N-N-E-R.
I'm sorry.
Where do you work?
Part-time or my full-time job?
Do you work at O'Toole's Pub?
Yes, I do.
And how often do you work there?
One night a week,
And how long have you worked there?
a little over a year.
You heard the testimony today about an incident that happened at O'Toole's Pub in January of 2016, correct?
Yes,
And were you present during that incident?
yes.
Okay, I'm going to take you through the entire incident because you were present. In terms of, what were you doing at O'Toole's Pub at that time?
I was cooking.
Okay. There was testimony of a individual and another individual horse playing and knocking over a table. Did you witness this incident?
I did not witness the incident. I heard the table being knocked over, and I went out front to see what the problem was.
Okay, so when you arrived out front, can you describe what you saw?
I saw two patrons talking, probably 3 to 4 feet away, talking about what just happened. I stepped between them.
Did you hear what was said?
They were just talking about there being beer being spilt over.
Okay. And when we talk about, we don't use names,
Yeah.
but we talk about the suspect, and we talked about the victim, and we talked about the victim's friend, can you identify which one that was talking?
Yes.
Who?
The victim was talking to the suspect's friend when I went out there and separated the two of them.
Okay.
The suspect wasn't in the 5 people that were surrounding that situation.
Okay. So you indicated they were 3 to 4 feet away. Did you hear what they were saying?
They were just talking about the beer being spilt.
Okay.
And the one whose beer was spilt was saying he should be getting another beer from the person who spilt the beer.
So this is the suspect saying he should be
Yes.
getting another beer from that person?
Yes.
What did you witness next?
I separated them. I talked to the victim, and I'm like, well, maybe you guys have had enough. You know, I was pushing each other around. Well, it's time for you guys to head out. He's like, all right, we're going to head out. I'm just going to pay my tab. I said, okay, well, let me go grab your pizza and bring it out. And
Where was
on
the
you go.
suspect at this time?
The suspect had walked around to the bathroom.
Okay.
He was on the other side of the stand-up table
Okay.
when the incident happened. So if I was facing it, incident was to the left, the suspect was to the right of the table.
So there was testimony that people were nose to nose for 20 seconds. You heard that testimony from Officer
Yes.
Stokes and Officer Campbell. Can you describe what, is that accurate? So you were at first-hand knowledge, you were there. Is that accurate?
No,
Okay.
no, it was 2 people discussing what happened. There was no physical altercation, no pushing, no shoving that I witnessed.
Okay. And the suspect itself wasn't, not even involved in this?
He was not.
This dispute over spilled beer?
No, he was at the table that the beer got spilled, but he wasn't involved in the first conversation that the victim and the suspect's friend were having.
Okay, let me take you back to, you asked them to leave. You said you guys
Yes.
hit the road, correct? And you said you were gonna go in the back to get your pizza. Can you pick it up from there?
I walked back to grab the pizza. As I was pulling it out of the oven and cutting it up and putting it in its to-go box, I heard another ruckus and the bartender yelling my name to come out. I come out of the bar, I separate the 2 fighters, the 2 combatants. The victim's friend escorted the victim out. One of the patrons had said that they had already called the cops. So when the bartender asked me if she should call the cops, I said, no, they've already been called.
Okay.
And one of the officers said that they saw her pick up her phone. She was getting ready to make the call to the cops when we were informed that they were already called.
So did you hear anyone say, I'm gonna call the police?
I heard someone say that they have already called the cops and they were on their way.
But you didn't identify that person
No, I did not.
because you were doing what?
I was separating the fight and then bringing the suspect over to the bathroom and making sure he didn't leave the pub.
Okay. And how long till the police arrived?
3 to 5 minutes after the incident occurred.
Okay. And in terms of, you heard a noise in the kitchen, how quickly did you come out to see what was going on?
A matter of seconds.
And did you act promptly when you
Yes.
saw there was a
Yep.
physical altercation?
Yes.
Nothing further.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So you are a cook at O'Toole's Pub?
Yes,
Work one night a week?
one night a week.
How many hours?
6 hours a night.
6 hours a night, what hours?
From 7 o'clock till we close.
What time do you close?
1 o'clock.
And this has been the case for how long?
Probably a year and a half, somewhere around there.
And what are your responsibilities as cook?
I cook, I clean up the kitchen, I close the bar up at night, I set the alarm, make sure the bartender gets out to the car safe.
And is the cooking area in the restaurant separated from the bar area?
There's a wall and then there's a door for you to go from the bar area to the kitchen area.
So when you're in the cooking area,
Yep.
performing your cooking responsibilities, you are separated from both the bar area as well as where the patrons are, correct?
By a door, yes.
By a door?
Yes.
And do you have any visual access to?
Yes, there's a window inside the, from the kitchen, there's a window that leads out to the bar that we can see out of.
And it provides you some partial view of what's happening in front of you?
Yes.
Okay. But you don't have any visual access to what's happening in other areas of the bar, correct?
No.
Okay. And when you were hired, did Mr. O'Toole hire you?
Yes.
And did he hire you as a cook?
As a cook slash manager, closer, just to make sure everything is taken care of.
So you were employed as a manager?
I was employed as a cook, but part of my duties was closing the bar, making sure everything was handled the way it was supposed to be.
And did Mr. O'Toole ever tell you that part of your responsibilities was to provide security to patrons?
Not necessarily.
Did he ever tell you that your responsibility included keeping the peace at O'Toole's Pub?
No.
How many times have you been called upon?
Just this one instance.
Just this one time. And subsequent to this event, have you been called upon on other occasions
No.
to intervene?
No.
Has there been any additional security provided subsequent to this incident that occurred in January of 2017?
Mr. O'Toole's at the bar a little more than, like he said, he was busy that night. Normally he's at the bar. He was busy that night or was stuck wherever he was and showed up late.
Well, did you ever discuss that with him? Did you ever get to the bottom of where he was?
It's none of my business.
Okay. And so, do you have two rates of pay, one when you cook and one when you manage the bar?
No, same.
Same. And how often did you find yourself managing the bar as opposed to cooking? Or performing both responsibilities?
Not very often.
But on the night of this incident, is it your testimony you were serving both as cook and as manager?
Tommy told me he was running late.
He called you,
But yeah, but when I first got there, he said he was running late and he was on his way.
and he said, "You're responsible, you're the manager tonight." Until I get there?
Not verbatim, no.
He
He
didn't
said,
tell you?
I'm on my way, which to me meant he'll be there eventually.
And did he tell you you were responsible until he got there?
No.
Okay. And do you understand that the manager of this bar room is responsible for the license?
Yeah.
And do you understand that the manager is responsible for ensuring compliance with all state laws as well as the rules and regulations of the town?
It's not my full-time job, but I would assume that would be what the manager would do.
Did Mr. O'Toole ever tell you that while you were serving as manager, it was your responsibility to ensure compliance with the rules and regulations?
I was never hired as a manager, but if something came up like closing the bar, or he couldn't show up there, I assumed that position.
Did he ever tell you that you were personally responsible
No,
to ensure compliance with the rules and regulations?
no.
Did he ever tell you he had designated you as a manager for the town?
After he received that second notice, after this first incident, he said, if I put you down as a manager, are you okay with that?
Okay, did you get a pay raise?
No.
And so, you know the town has rules and regulations, correct?
I'm assuming we do.
Have you ever been provided with a copy of the rules and regulations?
No.
Have you ever been asked or required by Mr. O'Toole to provide evidence that you had either been provided with a copy, or you had read the rules and regulations, or you understood the rules and regulations?
No.
So you
I
don't
object
know.
to this questioning. He wasn't the designated manager at the time of the incident.
He
We don't have to get
testified
into what
that
he's doing
From
after.
time to time, he has served as the manager.
And we're stipulating that he wasn't designated with the town as a manager that night. What else do you need to know?
I need to know that when he was otherwise designated as the manager, whether or not he was working with an understanding that the town had rules and regulations. And the answer was, he assumes that there was rules and regulations. He also testified that he's never been provided with a copy of the rules and regulations. So I think that speaks,
Why would that be necessary if he wasn't designated a manager on January
because Mr.
2016?
O'Toole left him responsible for O'Toole's Pub when he made the phone call, per the testimony of this witness, that he was to hold down the fort until he got there because he was running late. That was his testimony,
He didn't say hold down the fort. He said he was running late.
okay?
That's all that was he was running
And
late.
so who was responsible for O'Toole's Pub while Mr. O'Toole was running late? No one?
Well, I wasn't told I was
Please let
designated
him
manager that
answer the
day.
question.
But it wasn't you.
No.
Okay. So there was no manager and no security at the time of this altercation, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And there were two separate incidents that night between the two parties, correct?
No.
There wasn't?
No.
Okay.
The suspect and the victim were not
You answered the
talking
question.
to other
You
the
answered the
first
question.
time.
You answered the question.
They were not talking to one another? Where were you when the table was bumped?
I was in the kitchen.
Okay, so you didn't observe the incident that gave rise to the later smashing of the beer mug over the head of the victim, right?
As the table was bumped, I heard the table bumped. I came out of the kitchen,
Okay?
and the victim was talking to the suspect's friend. The suspect wasn't at that first conversation.
And so at what point do the suspect and the victim engage in any sort of verbal or physical interaction? Did you observe?
I didn't see that. I assume when he walked out of the bathroom, the cop said on the video, that that's when the altercation started.
Wait, you're relying upon the testimony of the police this evening?
So are you.
No, I'm not. I'm not. So you did not, is it your testimony that you did not observe any physical or verbal interaction between the victim and the suspect?
No, I did not.
Okay. Because you arrived too late, correct?
For the smashing of the glass,
No,
yes.
for the first, for the interaction that followed the bumping of the table.
I went out there, and the suspect and victim were not talking. The suspect was on the other side of the table. The suspect's friend was talking to the victim.
So do you know if there was any verbal or physical altercation between the suspect and the victim before the smashing of the beer mug?
There was not.
There was not, or you don't know?
There was not when I came out after the table got bumped.
You didn't witness it?
The table getting bumped, no.
Okay. And if there was a verbal or physical altercation, it happened before you arrived on the scene, correct?
If it happened within the 3 seconds it took me from walking to the kitchen to the where the table is,
But
then
your-
I did not witness
But
it.
your testimony here this evening is that what caused you to leave your post, your cooking post, was the mere bumping of a table
And a chair fell over.
and a chair fell over. But you didn't respond to any physical or verbal altercation.
When I walked out there, two people were talking. There was not a physical altercation. They weren't bumping chests. They were talking.
So there was no need for you to be concerned.
No.
So as a result, you returned to the kitchen and you're cooking, correct?
Yes.
And you allowed the parties to remain in the area.
Many people have conversation at bars that don't result in a fight. So if you're saying, did I assume a fight was happening? No. I didn't see anything
Was
that
it a
indicated.
conversation or was it an argument?
It was a conversation.
It was a conversation. So you return to the kitchen and then what happens next?
I boxed up his pizza to go, and as I was bringing it out, the the suspect come out of the bathroom. And I heard yelling, so I came out and had to separate them two.
So you saw the physical interaction at that point, correct?
I broke the two of them up.
But
I didn't see any swinging of a mug or anything like that. I came out and they were in headlocks, punching each other.
So where were you when the beer mug was smashed over the,
I was getting the pizza out of the oven.
so you were still in the back room?
Yes.
So when you appear on the scene, the victim's already had the beer mug smashed over his forehead.
The video shows this.
Yes.
We have to ask the
And
witness for. The video
you
shows.
then intervene by separating the parties.
Yes.
And is there anybody else at O'Toole's to assist you in separating the parties?
No.
Is there anybody there to assist you in making certain that that the parties leave O'Toole's pub?
There was no need to have anyone leave the pub until after that first incident, and he walked out of the bar.
So you heard the Whitman Police Department description of the video, correct?
Yes.
So are they incorrect in testifying?
Objection. He's not here to testify to what he heard in testimony. Complete objection. He does not have to answer that question.
He read-
It's not his opinion. It's not
You-
it's not his opinion on what the officers testified to. His opinion is irrelevant to what the officers testified to. So you asking him his opinion of the officer's testimony is ridiculous.
Is it your testimony that there was not two altercations between the parties, or is it your testimony that you only observed one?
The first incident that you guys are talking about was between the victim and the suspect's friend. The suspect and the victim did not have any conversation or talking prior to the incident.
Thank you.
That you observed, correct?
Correct.
Okay. What's your training for purposes of acting as a security personnel at a bar?
I wasn't hired as a security personnel.
You worked security that night, correct?
I broke up a fight.
What training do you have in breaking up fights?
Do you want my military background? Do you
No,
want my...
no, specific to bar rooms or places that hold liquor licenses. What is your specific training for the purpose of anticipating, preventing, and/or responding to physical altercations that occur in bar rooms, if any?
I haven't been to many bars where physical altercations always happen. This isn't something that would be trained.
So is your answer you don't have any training?
No.
Okay. Did you direct anybody to call Whitman Police Department?
No, because I was breaking up the fight when the person yelled out that they had called the police.
Do you know what caused the suspect to hit the victim over the head with a class beer mug? If you did not
Are
observe...
you asking
any-
me to get into the suspect's head and say what made
No,
him do
no, I'm just
that?
asking you, do you know? Did you
No.
witness
Does
anything
anyone know
that
why
would
anyone
have...
does anything?
Did you witness anything that would have led the suspect to hit the victim over the head with a beer mug?
Prior to that incident?
Yeah. Subsequent to the incident, has Mr. O'Toole increased his attendance at O'Toole's Pub?
He was normally there a good amount of time.
What's a good amount of time?
Objection.
I'm not
How would he
there
know? He
every
just
night.
said he's there once a week.
No, he's there once a week.
I know, so how would he know when Tom O'Toole is at the bar if he's only there once a week?
See, so how's he telling me he's there a good amount of time?
Every time I'm working, he's there.
Why are you asking the question?
Okay. Every time you're there, Mr.
Yes.
O'Toole is there. Are your hours still the same since the incident?
Yes.
Are you aware of a log maintained at O'Toole's Pub for problem patrons?
Yes.
And are there any names, and I'm not asking you to identify parties specifically, are there any names in that log?
There hasn't been any incidents that we've had to write names down on.
That's all right.
Nothing further.
You know, for a cook, you did a nice job breaking up the fight. I just gotta tell you, I've seen the video. If I'm in trouble, I want you around.
Calling Michael Friedman briefly to the stand. Please state your name, spell your last name for the record.
Michael Friedman, F-R-I-E-D-M-A-N.
Mr. Friedman, were you present during the altercation that we speak of today?
I was.
What time did you arrive at O'Toole's Pub that day?
I'm not sure, maybe an hour earlier.
Okay. Did you witness the altercation, the first possible altercation and second definite altercation? Did you
Yes,
witness
I
that? All right, can you take me through what you witnessed at the times you heard the testimony of the individual's horse playing? Can you take me from that point on into the second altercation?
I was sitting across the bar and I heard a bump or whatever. I saw someone get pushed into a table or shoved or goofing around or whatever. Beer got spilled. It seemed to me like just two people talking after that. There really wasn't loud voices or anything. Didn't seem like anything was going to happen.
Was there any physical altercation there?
Not at that moment, no.
Was, how far away were the individuals that were talking to each other?
3 feet maybe.
Okay. And how long were they talking to each other for?
I would say not even a minute.
And at some point in time they were separated?
Mm-hmm.
And who separated them?
That's Brian.
Brian who?
Brian Bonner.
Okay. And then after they were separated, were you still in the bar?
Yep.
And what did you witness?
I witnessed the victim and his friends getting ready to leave. Well, it seemed like they were getting ready to leave. They were putting on their jackets and whatnot. I witnessed the suspect going towards the bathroom. And then, next thing I know, the suspect was coming out of the bathroom. A couple words were exchanged. I'm not sure who said what first. I believe the victim pushed the suspect. Then the suspect was going towards the victim. The victim grabbed him. That's when the mug was swung.
What were you doing during this period of time?
I was sitting across the bar, and then right when it started getting hectic and stuff, I got up, walked over to that side just to be over there in case anything crazy was going to happen. Then they kind of had each other in a chokehold. I moved up, I grabbed the mug and moved it away to a safe spot so it couldn't be used again. And then they got broke up. The victim went outside. The suspect went in the bathroom.
Okay. And the police arrived.
Mm-hmm.
And did you hear anyone say, "I'm calling the police"?
I did.
What did that person say? First of all, I don't want you to identify his name, but can you identify that
That
person?
was the victim's friend.
And you know that person?
I mean, I've seen him before.
In terms of your observations and what you heard then, can you tell me in terms of what that person said?
He said, "I'm calling the cops are on their way."
And did you look at him in any way? Did he have a phone in his hand or just heard him say
Yeah, he was walking outside with it in his hand.
Okay. And was this during the actual
This
fight,
was
altercation?
probably when it was being broken up.
Okay. Nothing further.
Mr. Friedman, good evening.
How you doing?
You've got a pretty good memory of the events of January 6, 2017,
Yeah,
because you had a pretty good view of what went on that night,
I
right?
did.
You were pretty close to the parties, and you heard their conversation, and you observed everything they did that night, right?
I mean, I didn't hear every single thing they said.
But you were close enough to...
I was on the other side of the bar.
So you observed everything that
I
happened.
observed it. I've seen it with my eyes.
And tonight, you provided details about what you heard and what you observed, right?
Correct.
Okay. At any point in time, did you feel compelled to intervene to assist any of the parties or to prevent anything from happening?
I mean, I walked over there after the mug was smashed so I could move it so it wasn't used again.
Okay. And so you saw the first interaction between the victim and the suspect, right?
I didn't see them interact the first time, no.
You didn't?
I saw the victim's friend talking to, no, yes, the victim's friend was talking to the suspect's friend.
So
The
you
first
never
time.
saw the victim and the suspect interact before the victim had a beer mug smashed over his
Nope.
head. So you don't know what caused that to happen, right?
I have no idea.
But you clearly saw the victim get his head smashed open, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And you saw, Mr. Bonner, you said, you saw him react, you saw him separate the parties, and you also saw, or you heard a patron say he was going to make a phone call, right?
Correct.
Did you ever hear anybody from O'Toole's Pub instruct anybody to make a phone call to the Whitman Police Department?
I wasn't really paying attention to
No, but
that.
all I'm asking is...
I did not know.
Okay. And did you hear anybody from O'Toole's Pub make a phone call to Whitman PD?
I did not.
And do you know if this party that you identified actually made a phone call when he exited O'Toole's Pub? Did you see him make a phone call?
I mean, I seen him holding a phone to his ear, so I would only assume.
But you didn't see him make a phone.
No.
So you don't know whether or not he made a phone. And in fact, he made the phone call outside of O'Toole's Pub, correct?
I believe so. He was walking with the phone up to his ear, walking out.
So no one who was working at O'Toole's Pub that evening, well, let me ask you this. Did you see anybody from O'Toole's Pub exit O'Toole's Pub at the time that that phone call was made?
No.
So it would be impossible for anybody from O'Toole's Pub to confirm that this person who said, I'm going to make a phone call, actually made a phone call outside the building. Is that fair?
I suppose.
Okay. Now, after the incident occurred, the Whitman Police Department appeared on the scene, correct?
Correct.
You were still there?
I was.
Okay. And you spoke with the Whitman Police Department, correct?
I did not.
You did not.
Nope.
Do you recall speaking to Detective Campbell?
Nope.
Do you remember any interaction with Detective Campbell or any member of the Whitman Police Department?
No officers talked to me.
Nobody talked to you?
Nobody.
You don't recall saying to Detective Campbell that you had not observed anything that evening?
Nope.
How long were you at the bar after the incident?
I have no idea until it settled down.
Were you there as long as the Whitman Police Department was there?
I believe so, yeah.
In your testimony tonight is you had no one from the Whitman Police Department spoke to you that evening?
He answered the question.
Never.
Never?
Never.
He
Okay.
answered the
That's all I
question.
had. No, I'm satisfied. That's all I have. For now, for this witness.
Nothing further. Call Nikki McGinnis to the stand, please. Ms. McGinnis, could you state your name, spell your last name for the record, please?
Nikki McGinnis, MCINNIS.
And what do you do for work, Ms. McGinnis?
I'm a bartender at O'Toole's Pub.
I'm
And,
sorry I didn't hear that.
I'm a bartender at O'Toole's Pub.
and were you working the night of this incident?
Yes,
What time did your shift start?
7 p.m.
And do you recall what happened that night?
Yes,
Do you remember what happened that night?
yes.
Can you tell me from the point of where there was testimony about a individual's horse playing and knocking over a table? Can you tell me what you observed at that point in time?
The victim and his friend were horsing around. The victim kind of shoved, pushed. It was just horseplay. The friend into the table. The table then knocked into the suspect and spilled the beer. Most of the conversation was towards the suspect and the victim's friend.
Conversation from the victim
Yes.
towards the suspect?
Suspect's friend.
Suspect's friend, okay.
Yes.
Do you recall what was said?
No, I couldn't hear.
Okay.
There was too much distance from the
Okay.
bar.
How many people were in there? bar at that time?
I would say 9 to 10 at most.
Okay. Okay, so go ahead, I'm sorry.
And it was just kind of left at that. They were talking, there was no physical altercation between the two of them. The suspect, no, the victim, was kind of mumbling and saying snide things that I could hear because he was sitting right at the bar still. And that's when Brian and I said that it would probably be a good idea for them to go.
Okay.
And I asked the suspect to go outside.
So when you mean to ask them to go, shut down their tab?
Yep.
And did they have takeout food?
Yes, they had a pizza to go.
Okay. And Mr. Bono went in to get the pizza,
Yes.
and you were telling them to go, and they were packing up to go, and they were complying with your instructions?
Yes, one of the victim's friends gave me a credit card, so I had to turn around to the computer to close out their tab.
Okay. Did you feel like there was going to be any kind of altercation at that point in time?
No.
Okay. Can you tell me what happened next?
The victim was outside, like I asked him, in the side patio. He had to go to the bathroom at that time. There didn't seem to be an issue. It was squashed because there had been some time in between. He came back in, he went
He
up,
being-
the suspect.
Suspect? Okay.
Yes.
So the suspect goes outside?
Yeah.
Not
and
the
he came-
victim? Okay, the
Yeah,
suspect.
and the victim's still inside
Okay.
at the bar area. The suspect came in, he went all the way around the tables to avoid the victim and went into the bathroom.
Okay.
And then when the, sorry, I get confused.
Take your time.
When the victim, no, when the suspect came out of the bathroom, the victim was waiting for him at that time, and then more words were spoken, and the victim had put the suspect into a headlock.
Okay.
And that's kind of when.
You don't, I'm not trying to be rude, but you don't have to go over what went on then because the selectmen have a videotape of it. It speaks for itself. Just asking about your observations and what you did at that point in time. So when that fight started and with the beer mug, what did you do?
Thankfully, I've never been in an altercation in that way. So I had asked if I call 911 or the police station, because I don't know the Whitman police station off the top of my head. The one of the witnesses that was keeping the victim outside, she had said she had heard the friend call the cops at least twice, so there was no reason to call the cops.
Okay. And did you hear the friend, did you hear the person say they were calling the police, or did you hear this female person say that you?
I heard the friend call, and then she had reiterated that he had called as well.
So what did that person say who did call? Was it a
I'm
male
calling
or
the
female?
cops.
I'm calling the cops.
Yes.
And when did that happen?
It was,
Well, in relation to the altercation?
When
Were
it was
they
getting-
were they still fighting and Mr. Bonner was trying to break them up?
Yes.
Okay. Nothing further.
Good evening.
good evening.
How many hours a week do you work at O'Toole's?
Every other week I work 2 days, and the opposite week I work 1.
Okay. So how many hours are your 2 days per week, so
12 hours?
total?
Yes.
And then the other week?
6.
And what hours do you work?
7 p.m. to close.
And do you have any responsibilities other than being a bartender?
No.
As a bartender, have you ever been provided with the rules and regulations that have been issued by the town of Whitman for all liquor establishments in the town?
Yeah, I'm tip certified.
No, but have you been provided with a copy of the town's rules and regs?
Not to my knowledge.
Have you ever been designated by Mr. O'Toole in a management capacity for the bar in his absence?
No.
Did you direct anybody to make a phone call to Whitman PD?
No.
And you said you were unfamiliar with the number for Whitman PD?
Off the top of my head, yes.
And did you think that 911 would not work if you had called 911?
personal, I was always brought up 911 was for emergencies, as it is a fight, but when it's a town thing, it should be called throughout the town.
So you didn't think that a person getting a beer mug smashed over his forehead was an emergency warranting a phone call to 911?
At that time, I didn't know how severe it was because I couldn't see where it was.
You couldn't see the incident?
As you can see, I'm kind of short. It's sometimes hard for me to see right over the bar.
So this is your testimony, you didn't witness the altercation that resulted in the victim having a beer mug smashed over his head?
I wasn't sure exactly where he got hit. I was on the back side of it.
But when you realized he had been hit over the head, you saw the blood, correct?
Very minimal.
So from what you saw, you didn't think it was enough of an emergency to call 911?
Correct.
Have you ever discussed with Mr. O'Toole when you should call 911? Or the Whitman Police Department at whatever number you thought was appropriate?
Yes, when a fight breaks out, but the police were already contacted.
Did you observe that person make the phone call?
Yes, I saw him.
Where?
He was walking out and he was on the phone, and then he was right in the outside area, in between the outside and the inside little door area.
So Mr. Bonner, you heard Mr. Bonner's testimony, correct?
Yes.
Mr. Bonner said that the person left O'Toole's pub, exited O'Toole's pub, and he made the phone call from outside.
Well, Mr. Bonner was also breaking up the fight. I was behind the bar, so I could see a little bit more clear than he could.
But let me ask you more specifically, was the phone call by by the party who made the phone call, was it made inside or outside of O'Toole's pub?
Essentially, you could say outside.
Okay. And you were inside at all times, correct?
Correct.
So you couldn't tell whether or not a phone call was actually made?
Correct.
Okay. So you don't know if that person made a phone call?
I suppose you could say that, yes.
Okay. And had you ever been instructed that pursuant to the rules and regulations of the town, that O'Toole's pub was responsible for making the phone call?
If there was no understanding that the cops were called prior to, yes.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
If there was an understanding that the cops were not called prior to, yes.
So who told you that provided that some third party make a phone call, you as an employee of O'Toole's pub was not obligated to make the phone call?
The patrons that were at the bar.
No. You said that it provided that somebody else had made the phone call, was your understanding that you weren't obligated to make it?
Wait.
As an employee of O'Toole's pub. Who instructed you that that was the rule?
Tommy O'Toole.
He told you so long as a patron made a phone call, you, as an employee of O'Toole's pub, was not obligated to make a phone call?
As long as the cops were called.
When did he tell you that?
I don't know exact dates.
But he specifically told you that.
If the cops were called, and the cops were called, then the cops are called.
And that eliminated any need on the part of an employee, staff member to make a phone call.
In my personal judgment, yes.
But that's what Mr. O'Toole told you.
He never said those specific words to me, no.
But he said, so long as the phone call was made, you don't have to make a phone call.
He didn't say me specifically, no. Said the cops need to be called, and the cops are called.
Do you agree that there were two separate altercations?
I wouldn't call it an altercation, no.
But there was a confrontation, right?
I wouldn't really even call it a confrontation.
There were words between the victim and the suspect before the second incident resulting in the beer mug being smashed over that forehead, correct?
Words that I did not find threatening, yes.
What were those words?
I can't tell you exactly what they were, but it wasn't initially between the suspect and the victim.
Okay, but at some point you observed the victim and the suspect having words.
The suspect was saying snide remarks from the bar.
What were the snide remarks?
I can't remember.
You know, did you hear them that night?
There were mumbles and there were other people yelling. I
So
can't
he
tell you
was saying
exactly what
things
it was.
So is it fair to say that he was saying things in order to provoke the other party?
Yes.
Okay. And based upon the fact that there had been the bumping of the table, spilled beer, one of the parties was directing provocative language at the other party, you decided, or you and Mr. Bonner decided that it was a good idea to ask the parties to go, correct?
Correct.
Did you make some determination as to whether or not any of the parties were, what their level of intoxication was?
I had served both parties one beer.
Okay. But the facts required that the parties leave, because this wasn't just a common occurrence. There was some alarm on your part that caused you to ask the parties to go.
On my personal judgment, yes.
Yes.
Knowing the parties.
But yet, even though you were concerned about the way this thing was trending, nobody escorted either of the parties from O'Toole's Pub.
No.
And nobody called the police at that point.
No.
And what caused Mr. Bonner to come out in the first place?
Because he heard the ruckus and,
So there was a ruckus that he was responding to.
well, the table got knocked into.
And was he responding also to the verbal antagonism between the parties?
No, because there was no yelling. It was a conversation.
But there was enough for him to respond and come in from the back.
Because he heard the table.
And after that first interaction between the parties, did Mr. Bonner stay on the scene?
No, he went outside to go get the pizza because I had asked the victim's party to close out their tab and go.
So despite the first incident, there was nobody from O'Toole's Pub that stood in the way from that incident escalating into the second altercation, correct?
No, because I asked the suspect to go outside, as he did, and the victim was closing out his tab
And
and waiting for his...
what prevented the suspect from coming back in?
He had to go to the bathroom.
No, but what prevented him from coming back in and engaging the victim a second time?
Because there was no altercation at that time. It was just words between two people.
And is it fair to say that in order to bring this whole episode to an end, it required the efforts of patrons of O'Toole's Pub? Did patrons get involved for purposes of separating the parties?
I can't recall exactly.
You don't remember? And how much time was there between this first interaction between the victim and the suspect and the second incident with the smashing of the building?
I couldn't tell you exact time, but I'd say several minutes.
Several minutes. Enough time for a phone call to be made?
To whom?
Whitman Police Department?
Yes, but I didn't feel as though there needed to be a call.
Have there been any safety measures or additional security practices put in place since this incident at O'Toole's Pub?
What do you mean exactly?
Are you operating any differently for purposes of security or ensuring that these types of incidents don't happen?
Tommy, make sure he's aware and around the pub more often.
Based upon you're basing that upon your own limited schedule there, correct?
Correct. Majority of my Friday nights, Tommy and I work together.
Is there a problem patron log maintained at O'Toole's?
Yes.
Are there any names in it?
Yes, I personally put names in it.
When?
I couldn't tell you exactly when. I had
Want to look up?
a patron call me a vulgar name. I asked him to leave and I logged in my book.
Show them what that
So
is.
But I've worked there 3 years from October, so I couldn't tell you a date when I wrote it in there.
how many names have you put in there?
Not many.
I'm gonna show you a book. It's just handed to me.
Yep, I know that.
Is this the book?
Yep,
Is that the problem patron one?
yep.
Can you show me where you have made any entries regarding problem patrons?
Hopefully everybody can see that. That's just me.
Right here. They gave me it.
Really nice.
And what's the date of that?
12/6.
What year?
I don't know. I just wrote 12/6.
Any guess as to what year that entry was made?
No, like I said, I've worked there come 3 years in October.
Was it before or after the incident that brings us here tonight?
Before.
Before.
Yes.
Have you made any entries since?
No, I have not.
Were either of the participants in the altercation on January 6th known to you?
Did I know them?
Yeah.
Yes, they come into the
Have you had
bar.
any issues with either one of them prior to this incident?
With the bar, no.
I would like at this point to ask Mr. O'Toole whether we could secure a copy of this book. There's several entries.
Is that the book that had no names in it?
I'd stipulate there were no names put in it from the time of the incident until we spoke to Chief Benton. So, yeah, I'll stipulate to that. This
That's
is
the one that was no names.
No, there were no incidents.
The
He's going to testify
entries all
to this.
happened since he talked to Chief Benton.
I'm sorry?
The entries all were put in after he talked to Chief Benton.
No. The
Well, then
date.
I'm-
He'll testify to that.
That's-
We have no problem turning it over.
Yeah, answer any questions.
So long as we, I do think, given the fact that this witness has testified as to an entry that she made in the book, there were several other entries. I don't have the time to review them all right now, but I would ask that we get a complete copy of that book
Okay.
with all
Sure.
entries.
Absolutely.
And with that having been said, that's all I have for this witness.
No
Thank
questions.
Okay, thank you.
So I'd be delayed, and Brian was nice enough to hang in there.
Was it your intention to be there that night as the manager? Okay. And what time did you arrive?
A little after 9:15, 9:20-ish.
And did you speak to the officers of the Whitman Police Department?
I did. Yes, we went back to they asked if they could take a look at the surveillance, and I said, sure.
And who was present looking at the surveillance video?
Detective Campbell and Officer Stovich.
Okay. And there was some testimony about that video. Can you please testify to your observations of that video?
Yeah, as far as myself not being through some insinuation, I wasn't capable of providing the actual footage. We have been cooperative and given information to the Whitman PD. And I said it would just take an IT guy to come down and make sure we get it right. Because I don't want to put in a thumb drive, yeah, I'm a bar owner, a construction worker, but I'm not an IT guy. But, so rather than that, the detective said, you know what, I'm just going to take out my iPhone.
So you
And I-
offered to supply anything they wanted. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I've given them my hard drive to take at times if they want it.
You've given that before?
I'm an open book. Yeah, whatever.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So can you describe your observations of the video?
Yeah, we watched the video, and you can see the victim, alleged victim, horsing around with his friend, just at the side of the bar. And, they were kind of just goofing around, and he pushed him, and he got knocked into one of our bar top tables. And there's no volume on any of the surveillance cameras, it's illegal. So you just assume you can see people looking back and forth. And I saw Brian go out, talk to them, basically just go, this and this, and you see him leave. And then you see the suspect come out of the bathroom. And the victim, they put on his jacket, and girlfriend appeared to be settling the tab. That's what it appeared to be. And he called him over. And they had a brief discussion, push, Okay. All within a matter of, I keep hearing, you know, I understand 7 minutes from the first, I hear 5, but when he came out of the bathroom, then when they locked up and he got struck, Brian was out within 3 seconds. And we've all seen the video.
Yeah, Mr. O'Toole, what I'm concerned about is what's not on the video that the selectmen viewed. So let's take you back to the video that you watched with Officer Stovich and Detective Campbell. From the horseplay, just the questions I asked, all the people that had first-hand knowledge. You didn't have first-hand knowledge, correct? You were not there.
Correct.
But you viewed the video. So can you tell me what was on the video from the time they were horseplaying and the table got knocked over, or bombs?
I didn't see the suspect or the victim engaged. It was clearly the victim's friend. It turned around and it looked like they were just having verbal. And I can't speculate to what they were saying, but obviously, a bear, I guess, had been knocked over, and they wanted some restitution, I guess. So, and like I said, I saw Brian walk out, and as I was sitting with the officer, he said, "Well, my guy's he's doing his job." Just went over and looked like he just went like this, and it didn't look like there was any like, "Hey, you get over there," you. It just kind of looked like, "Hey, yes." And again, speculation on my part for what I witnessed, and then, like I said, you see the victim put on his jacket. He's actually playing with the zipper. You can watch it on the tape, and out of the bathroom, and there it happened. It was pretty much that quick.
Did your employee tell them that they had to leave? Did an employee of O'Toole's Pub tell the victim and his friends they had to leave?
From my understanding, when I had the conversation with my staff, Nikki had notified Brian. Brian came out and just said, "Guys, tonight we're going to deal with it." There's 8 to 10 people in the bar. It was pretty quiet. And he was just like, "I don't want to deal with it. So we need to just wrap it up."
And that's because they bumped into a table and knocked over a
Yeah,
table.
well, somebody was unhappy that beer got spilled, and he wasn't going to deal with it. So he just said, "That's it. Go on your way." And they said, "Okay, we'll settle up." And it looked, again, I'm not going to determine.
Does the suspect go off camera at that point? So,
Yes, to the bathroom.
okay, well, that, you're assuming he went to the bathroom, but on
There's
camera,
there's nowhere else to go.
there's
really.
nowhere, okay.
The camera's right in the corner, and obviously you can't film.
Okay.
So, the camera's within 3 feet of where the bathroom is, basically.
So you offered to provide anything that the
Yeah.
Detective Campbell wanted
Yep.
at that time, and you met with him that night. And did you meet with the chief of police?
I did, obviously. There's been a little history, and I've had a very good rapport with everybody with the town. And I called up and I said, "Chief, when do you want to meet?" And he said, "Well, we'll set a date and figure this thing out. There's other legal implications from the other two." So there was a little bit of time that passed, and obviously they were gathering their information for the town. And we met and we talked, and there was definitely a misunderstanding about the whole log was my idea.
Well, let me ask you, is this your staff logbook?
Yes.
Okay. And you had a conversation with Chief Benton about this logbook. Can you describe that conversation?
Yeah, basically, I said, "Chief, what do you think's in my best interest, and what do you think I can do to appease you to know that we're trying to look out for public safety?" And we went back and forth and talked about some things, and he asked me, he says, "You know what, on the video," he said, "the lighting looked a little dim from years past, so I put all new LED lighting in." And then I said, when we have entertainment, if that's really the only time that the crowds got up, and I would work the door, there's a green shirt right there that I had. And the person would have, if I wasn't on the door, if I had somebody else designated to work the door, they'd have that shirt on. And
This is your conversation with Chief Benton
this
years
is
ago?
this is all preliminary before even taking action on this stuff. I said, "What do you think?" And he said, "Yeah, why don't you take care of that? Why don't you update your video, the whole system?" So I put in new lights, put in a whole new system. I had the keypad for our security system. It's touchtone. You can hit it. Like if there's a fire, you can hit it. It calls automatically.
Is that the panic button that was
Yeah,
referred
it's
to?
it's not underneath where you hit it, but you can just go to the keypad, which is right behind the wall to the bar, and you can hit it. So
Okay, so it's a potential misunderstanding between you and Chief Benton on when you're supposed to have doormen and when you're supposed to have the green shirts on.
yeah, that, and I think the not writing it in. What I was saying was just we were having a casual conversation. It wasn't anything like you know, this big fact find. We're like, well, you know, what's going on? Well, he's always saying the same thing. What can we do, Tommy, for public safety? And I said, Chief, I haven't had to write in that book in a while. It hasn't been any real problem. So maybe it's misconstrued like there wasn't any, but you can take that and always read through it. I don't have to make you a copy. I'll keep another temp log if you want. You can take that tonight if you like.
Was your understanding that to have a doorman present on every weekend night, or a doorman present when you had entertainment?
No, it's basically entertainment, or like on a St. Patrick's Day or something where we're gonna have. I mean, my occupancy is only 70. Everybody, if you haven't been in my bar before, it's probably smaller than this room. So,
Do you do any entertainment anymore?
no, my wife and I just, you know, we said, you know what, we'll just hold off and we'll apply for a permit on special days if we think we're gonna have entertainment.
Okay. When's the last time you did have entertainment in the bar, as you recall?
It was a while ago. I don't know the exact date.
Let me ask you this, while you're the manager and you're working at your own bar, do you call the police every time there's some kind of argument between patrons, maybe an argument over a football game, or maybe people just have an argument? Do you think it's necessary to call the police?
No,
When is it necessary to call the police?
when it's something outside of what, you know, what two individuals, if I can't handle it, and I tell my staff, if you don't think you can de-escalate something, just ask somebody to leave, and then just call. It's not the end of the world, but I don't want to have them just calling 911 because two guys are arguing about a spilt beer. It's not something that's imminent danger, and yeah, again, that's up for them to make the call, but yeah, no, I mean, there's quarrels. If you go anywhere, there's somebody going to be arguing about something.
So you do instruct your employees to call the police if there's any physical altercation?
Absolutely.
I have nothing further.
Mr. O'Toole, good evening.
Good evening.
So you were stuck in traffic on the night of this incident?
Correct.
What time are you expecting to be there?
I'm usually there around 7 o'clock, 6:30, 7 o'clock.
What time is O'Toole's open?
2.
So 2 o'clock?
2 o'clock. Noon time on the weekend.
Okay. So, but you had no expectation or intent to be there when the bar opened at 2?
My wife is usually there during the day, and I come in, well, it goes back and forth on the weekends. I'm there.
Was she there on that day?
No. She was there in the morning, and she was on her way home.
So when O'Toole's opened at 2 o'clock that afternoon, there was no manager?
My wife was there, and she had left.
What time was she there?
She's always there from
No,
10, 11.
On this particular day?
She was there probably at 10:30, 11 o'clock in the morning, and after we open up around 2:30, 3 o'clock, she departs. And I usually try to get in there at 6:30, 7.
And so from 2:30 until your arrival at 9, what time was it? What time did you arrive?
About 9:15, 9:20?
There was no manager present, right?
Correct.
And, you know, to be clear, the only manager that you had designated at the time of this incident for the town of Whitman was yourself, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And at the,
Up until...
and you are also aware that the town...
Can I
Let him
answer
finish
the
his question. Let him finish his answer, please.
How do you act?
I have not.
Please.
Thank you. Up until we got the list for the new revised, that a manager had to be on premises for, again, we want to call it splitting hairs. There was never any form sent to me. So I had said, it's more or less like, I don't want to name somebody, I don't want to have them get in any legal trouble for being quote unquote, you know, the manager. But when this came out, we made a list and we said, we're just going to make all the cooks managers. We could make all the bartenders. I talked to the chief about it. He goes, you can make all the bartenders managers if you want to. The only thing that was not, that I am guilty of is not creating my own form and submitting it.
So prior to this incident, you're aware that the town adopted rules and regulations?
Absolutely.
Okay. And would you agree with me that, and I'm sure you heard the testimony, we can pull out the rules and regs and review them specifically if you prefer, but do you agree that the rules and regulations require that you designate a manager and/or any other licensed representative.
Correct.
And that rule was in place prior to the happening of this incident.
Right, but I did not register, I did not resubmit something with the state. I had gotten my license. I didn't put anything to the town, or nor had I been contacted to say. So technically, my cooks are my managers. They're the ones that, when they're there, when deliveries are being made, and I'm not there, they're acting on O'Toole. They'll sign off on things.
And so your cooks, who are assigned primary responsibility for cooking, are also expected by you to ensure compliance with all state liquor licensing laws, and also to ensure compliance with all local rules and regulations. Is that your testimony?
No, my testimony is that, again, it is expected for them to care for the bar. Trying to answer this properly. I know where you're going with this, so is, yeah.
Why don't you ask him to repeat the question? If you don't understand the question, ask him to repeat it. Can you repeat the question, please?
Okay, let me back up here. So, under the rules and regulations for the town, the manager of the bar is not only obligated to be there during all operating hours, you would agree, correct?
Or,
Just
well,
work with me.
we are splitting hairs, so.
Is-
Does it
is-
say 40
must-
hours?
Okay, so is it your view that pursuant to the rules and regulations of the town, there must be a manager on the premises while your bar room is open?
With all due respect, I'm going to take the same stance that
Okay.
Frank took, that my understanding is that I was in compliance, because I fulfilled my obligation of being there 40 hours.
Okay, so that's your interpretation.
That's correct.
And furthermore, are you aware that the rules and regulations for the town place direct responsibility with the manager to ensure compliance with all applicable laws and regulations?
Again, I feel like I'm in compliance. Those paragraphs are very ambiguous.
No. This is a separate paragraph that provides that.
Yes, the manager is responsible for, right.
So if there's no manager on the property, would you agree that there's nobody there to ensure compliance?
There's no manager that is quote-unquote listed with the state. I had people as listed for my business. I did not have a form to submit to the board.
But from time to time, you would designate somebody informally as the manager of the bar in your
It
absence.
was just understood.
Excuse me?
It was understood.
It was
that they-
understood.
That they were
And so what type of training did you provide these folks?
just monthly meetings?
Monthly meetings? And did you provide them with a copy of the rules and regs?
No.
So despite the fact that the rules and regs required that they ensure compliance with those rules and regs, you never felt it your own responsibility to provide them with a copy of the rules and regs?
I didn't think that.
Okay. We talked about the video, and you testified regarding your recollections of what was on the video, what wasn't on the video. But the video is no longer in existence, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And when the Whitman Police Department visited you on the night of the incident, you knew that they were securing, there was a discussion about providing them with a copy that evening, correct?
No. What was said and what we came up with was he was going to use, the detective said, I'm going to use my iPhone because when I have offered my assistance, they brought in IT guy, several, to come in, and so we can go get him. And he says, well, I'm gonna get right on this, I have my iPhone. So he made a copy with his iPhone that I felt, what better hands could it be in? It's in the PD's hands, so my system purges itself after 8 days. So without hearing back from the detective, without hearing from anybody saying that, hey, we're gonna come back and get more footage, what else should I have done?
Was there a discussion with Whitman PD that night wherein it was discussed that they would return with their IT personnel for the purpose of assisting the efforts to reproduce this video?
There was no request.
There was no request.
There was no
So you
request, and furthermore, with all due respect to the officers and to the detective, if there was a request, there was no fault.
But
So-
was there a request, regardless of the fault?
No, the iPhone, and then we replayed it on the iPhone. We watched it. So we thought that that was sufficient.
So you obviously didn't know, and at that point, you were not aware that what was captured on the iPhone was incomplete?
Absolutely not.
And so when Detective Campbell went back and he noted in his report that it was an incomplete tape, he was the only one who had determined that?
Again,
You had
detective, with all due respect, I would think that if he went back and he saw that it was incomplete, I would have got a phone call, Tom, I want to come back down there and take some more, and sure, it's an open door.
So with a pending criminal investigation, with no doubt, a pending liquor license, disciplinary matter open, you didn't feel compelled to secure that tape?
That tape was as secure as I could possibly make it. I didn't think anything of it, to be quite honest with you. I was pretty satisfied that the detective had the necessary information.
And you had no expectation that they were going to return to secure a copy of that tape, a physical copy of the tape?
Well, to answer that again, I felt like it was complete. I didn't get notified until just now that it wasn't.
And so you heard one of your staff members tonight testify that you told her that in the event a phone call was made, that satisfied O'Toole's Pub's obligation to make a phone call. Did you hear that testimony?
Well, she clarified that.
She clarified it by saying that I always said, call Whitman PD. And what she said was, when she heard that people said they were gonna call, now remember the response time. I understand how you wanna hit me with this thing, saying that we didn't call.
We didn't
And when they
Please
said
finish
the police are being called, and it was, I believe, I don't know whose statement it was in, it says, the bartender appeared to have her phone. She said, should I call? When they said the police are being called, she didn't call. And they were there soon thereafter. So, let me finish.
Go ahead.
So for me, I want everybody here to understand that I applaud my staff. I think they did a great job. She inquired, should I call the police? And they said they're being called. She got a little nervous when she was asked a question, and she says, well, if there's a fight. I mean, it's an awkward position to be in. But I think she answered sufficiently. That she grabbed her phone and said, should I call the police? She didn't see the severity of it. It was just off to where she was. There was, if you watch the tape, there were two people settling a tab in front of her. So she didn't know the severity of it. You asked how much blood, she didn't know the severity of it. When the police were called, do I think it was sufficient? Would I like for my staff to call anyway? Yes. Have I told them since the incident? Yes. No matter what call. I talked to the chief about it. He said, Tommy, just satisfy everybody and call. I said, okay, that's fine.
So you said, your own testimony was that you have, you told your staff, call when it's necessary. I don't expect them to call every time there's a minor interaction.
Exactly. I don't want to be pulling the Whitman PD. If two people are arguing over a field goal in a football game, I don't want my staff to panic and call 911.
Do you think that the necessity for a phone call to the police department is different if there's no manager on the premises and no security?
With all due respect, I think you are misinterpreting. It's a letter of the law, okay, but I have sufficient staff on hand. Did Brian handle it sufficiently? 100%. It was, and we can argue over the intent about the answer and this and that, but he handled it remarkably well. He was being commended by the selectmen. If I had somebody working the door, it was not a volatile situation. If somebody was outside checking IDs, he's right there. So that person, it wasn't going to be de-escalated by somebody else. I think it was handled spot on. I mean, I can't say it enough. I mean, it's
you
being
think the
implied
vic-
because they're not a quote-unquote manager that they cannot handle the situation. I totally disagree.
Do you think the victim feels that this incident was handled spot on?
Objection.
Excuse me.
Objection.
You-
Don't even answer the question. It's ridiculous. You're gonna ask what the victim
excuse
feels
me.
like?
Excuse me,
You're gonna ask the witness how the victim feels.
I am, because he says it was
I
handled
object.
spot on.
I object. Can we have an
Handled
overruled
spot
or
on.
sustained? He's gonna ask how the victim feels. Can I ask the board if he can ask that question?
It's actually a rhetorical question, and I think we all know what he's getting.
So,
There's no such
He
thing. as
wasn't really
rhetorical
asking for it.
questions. Nope. What's he doing?
so there was no necessity on the night of this incident to call the Whitman Police Department because somebody left O'Toole's Pub while reporting that they intended to call Whitman PD. Is that your opinion?
If somebody says, I'm calling 911, and their phone is to their ear, okay, they called 911. Have I asked my staff, would you please, in the future, don't assume. So was it assumed? Yes. Did they come? Yes.
Prior to the incident, did you tell them regardless of whether or not a patron makes a phone call or it's assumed that a patron makes a phone call, that it was their
I
responsibility?
believe Nikki responded, and I will reiterate, I have said, call 911, call the police, call the response number, don't always call. If you just need somebody to, the number is just off to the right of where our register is, the number to call. So,
I don't agree that that was your testimony, but we can move on. You said, we were talking about precautions that you had discussed with Chief Benton
correct.
back when there were some prior disciplinary events at O'Toole's Pub. And you said there must have been some sort of misunderstanding or miscommunication between the parties.
Yeah, well, and we talked about this, the letter written, it basically reads that I didn't have, and I don't have, and I'm not in compliance, and I'm here to tell you that, you know, and we've discussed this, that you can't rewrite it, what's written is written, and the understanding was when we have entertainment, we would have somebody with the staff shirt on out front.
Can I just interrupt you for a second? I want to show you what was marked as Exhibit 9, and the board has a copy of it. Are these the representations that you're referring to?
Yes,
And was that prepared by you?
yes,
Those are your words, right?
yep.
Okay.
Weekend nights, I had entertainment every weekend.
So the first bullet says, it says proactive approach to public safety.
Yep,
And these are the representations that you made to the board in the context of a prior disciplinary hearing, right?
correct.
And you say that as part of your proactive approach to public safety, you were going to provide green safety colored staff shirts, correct?
Yep.
Okay. And that's not qualified in any way, correct? Am I reading that? You don't say weekends, nights, live events, etc. You say you're going to provide green colored security staff, right?
Correct.
Okay. You also say there's a panic button that's going to be installed and a keypad for police and fire
Done.
response. That's done.
There's a shirt, so that's done.
Okay. Well, was anybody wearing a neon green safety color?
Again, we had discontinued having entertainment. It has been a couple of years. So we discontinued having doormen with staff shirts.
Does
Is
that?
it, I guess I should have rewritten it.
Okay. But it doesn't qualify in any way in terms of live events. You'll agree with me? Second, there's a panic button on the keypad. You've installed the keypad in the panic
That
button?
was done. Yeah.
Was that employed on the night of the incident?
That's been,
This was
No,
never
did
alleged
anybody
as an
use it?
infraction.
yeah.
This is a suggestion. None of this was ordered by the board or by the chief. This was O'Toole putting together suggestions to make things better. None of this was ordered at any time by the town of Whitman or by Chief Benton.
It was put.
This is not an alleged infraction. That's not why we're here today.
The board is, or the town has cited Mr. O'Toole's failure to implement what he represented would be safety precautions that would be implemented at his facility. So if I could continue, What night of the week did this incident occur?
Friday.
Was there a doorman on?
No.
Is
No,
that
enter-
Friday's
there's no
a week?
entertainment.
But does, it says doorman on during weekend nights, does it say with live entertainment?
No, it doesn't.
Okay, so the incident log you provided, there were no, are there any incidents that are identified by that incident log?
That's the question?
It says incident log.
Yep.
Does the log that we're going to get a copy of detail all incidents that have occurred at O'Toole's Pub since you gave this to the Board of Selectmen?
Yes.
It does, okay. So we will need a copy of it.
Yes.
You did install new LCD lights?
Yes.
And is there new surveillance video and computer software?
Yes.
Okay. And have you provided each employee with a list of expectations? And you
Yes.
have a written acknowledgement of their receipt?
Yes, we can
Can you
provide
provide
to
that
you.
to the board, please?
I don't have right here. I will get that for you.
Okay. And did those staff expectations and duties?
I believe, actually, excuse me, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I think I did provide that acknowledgement last time.
You can provide
I
it
gave a
again.
packet with it.
So
but
you, so
I
I
think I
don't,
gave an example in some of the sheets that I provided.
but you have one for
But
each
yeah,
of you?
yes.
Okay,
Yep.
so we could get a copy of that?
Sure.
Perfect. And does that acknowledgement include an acknowledgement of receipt of the town's rules and regulations?
No. I'll take that under advisement, provide that moving forward.
Okay. That's all I have for Mr. O'Toole at this point.
No questions? And that was your last witness? It is.
I would just briefly like to bring Detective Campbell back up.
And this is the last one?
This is it. Detective Campbell, were you present during the testimony offered by the witnesses presented by O'Toole's Pub?
Yes,
And did you recognize those parties?
a couple of them, yes.
Okay. And do you recall my asking a witness whether or not he spoke with you as part of your investigation?
Yes,
And do you recall that witness indicating that he never spoke with you?
correct.
Okay. Who's that witness?
I had a brief
No,
conversation.
no, who is the witness? Can you identify the witness?
Mr. Freeman.
Okay. And did you speak with Mr. Friedman on the night of this incident?
Briefly, yes.
Okay. And what was the scope or extent of your conversation with Mr. Friedman?
I had asked him if he had seen anything. You know what happened? I can tell him what happened. He told me he did not see anything. He stated that he was seated on the other side of the bar watching television.
Did you hear his testimony this evening?
Yes,
And did you hear him provide vivid and specific detail as to what he observed on that night?
yes,
Was it consistent with what he told you when you investigated the incident on the night of the incident?
no.
Thank
If I could add,
Sure.
the reason why he stands out to me is because when he tells me he didn't see anything, when I'm reviewing the videotape, I observed that he is seated at the other side of the bar. But during the altercation, he walks around the bar, moves the beer mug off of the bar, and stands back watching the altercation. So that's why he stands out to me is, this guy told me he didn't see anything. So I want to point out why that stands out to me. We have a, when we say, is he lying now or is he lying then?
But his testimony this evening would certainly be at odds with what he told you that night.
Absolutely.
And then just finally, we've had testimony regarding how you captured the video of the incident on the night of the incident. Did you have a discussion with Mr. O'Toole wherein you indicated that you intended to return to retrieve another better copy of the video?
Yes, there was a discussion is that neither one of us knew how to download it. My intention was to come back with Josh McNeil. Like I said, I capture it that night just to make sure I have it. I think it's operator error. I think when the video started playing, I had my phone up, I hit record on my phone, and there must have been a lag time from when my phone started recording to where the video was playing.
But did you express that intent to return to Mr. O'Toole that night?
Yes.
That's all I have.
Detective Campbell, you didn't state Michael Friedman in your police report, did you?
No, I stated that I talked
You
to several.
didn't state his name is not in it, correct?
I didn't know his name.
Okay.
And I can tell you how I learned his name. if you like that.
So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's over 7 or 8 people in your police report that you spoke to, and you mentioned their names in the police report, but you don't mention Michael Friedman's name, correct?
I want to refer to my report.
Sure.
How many people I refer to in my report.
Sure.
I believe I listed as far as the information, I listed the people who actually cooperated and told me what happened. I did state that there were several people who didn't cooperate. Mr. Friedman was one. I learned his name from the BCI officer that was there that night, who's familiar with him, who also said that he told him that he didn't say anything. That's how I learned his name. He looked familiar to me the night of the incident, but I wasn't sure who he was. There were several other people in there that told me they didn't see anything. I didn't write down their names either.
It's fair to say that you have 6 different names in your police report, including the suspect and the victim.
I have victim, the female who intervened and helped out, the person who called the police, the cook, the bartender. That's who I have in my report. The only patron name I have in there is the one that cooperated.
Okay. Mr. Friedman's name is not in the report, though.
He didn't cooperate.
Did you ask Mr. O'Toole for a copy of the video?
No, I knew that he didn't know how to do it.
You did ask for it?
I don't think I asked him to do it. I told him that I'd be back with the IT director. I've dealt with Mr. O'Toole on several occasions, like I said earlier, after the fact, any incident down there, whether it be a fight in the bar or where he's the victim of a breaking and entering or anything like that, he's always cooperated.
Okay.
I know from those experiences that he doesn't know how to download the video.
Okay. So there's no reason for him to be not cooperative this time? Do you feel he was uncooperative this time?
No, absolutely not.
Okay, so...
But I just never got with my IT guy to get back down there. I think he might have texted me at one point and just said, hey, I'm at the bar today, if you can come down. It might have been a Saturday, the IT guy doesn't work Saturday. It just was a missed thing with me. It was nothing on Mr. O'Toole's part as far as me getting the video.
Sure. And there's testimonies, it's fair to say there's testimony that he thought that you were capturing everything with your phone, because you thought you were capturing everything with your phone. So it would be fair to say that Mr. O'Toole thought you were doing that too,
Right, and my intention was to go back and get the actual
which he
You
would
know,
have
the
provided if he did.
downloaded from the DVR.
Okay, and he would have provided that if...
I'm sure if I had got back there.
That's all. Thank you.
Just one point, did you say you received a text after the fact from Mr. O'Toole?
From what I recall, when he was testifying, I believe he did reach out to me at one point and say, do you need that video? I didn't know it was I don't know when it was 8 more than 8 days later, where it was already gone. Just when he was, I recall the,
Okay, nothing further from me.
Awesome. Okay, thank you for putting us through that and giving us both sides of the issue. We have a couple of things that we need to receive and look at, I think, before we make a final decision. The book, copy of the book, and there was a form that you were just talking to Mr. O'Toole.
Yeah, an acknowledgement of just
The acknowledgement
expectations.
form.
The
Yeah.
employee acknowledgement form
Yeah.
for his employees, right.
I personally feel uncomfortable discussing and deciding at this time before I see the book. So I'm afraid we may have to, well, I don't know how the rest of you feel. If you guys want to deal with it now, you can.
Do you want to make copies and send them electronically to you? Would that be easier?
It'd be fine, but what it means is we have to come together one more time for you to hear the decision, for us to deliberate. And we have to
Well,
deliberate.
I'm just trying to facilitate, so if you don't have, if you're not going to be together, I'll send you electronic copies, because obviously you're going to have to look at the book.
Yeah. Yeah, electronic copies is fine. I'm just, if that's part of what we really need to look at to come to a decision, and maybe you guys could chime in if you'd like. If we need to look at that to make a decision, we need to do it, we need to continue this meeting until we do that. Until the next time that we meet. Or so.
Simply for the purpose of having a discussion regarding those documents and deliberating regarding discipline, if any.
Yeah. Yeah, the deliberation about the discipline happens in an open session. So it's not something that we talk about in between times. It's something that we have to come together again and meet, discuss in front of you, and then deliver.
May I understand you've received all the information that you need. If I just may, in closing, 1 minute, if I could just ask the selectmen to please read the decision, which talks about the law and foreseeability.
The one that you
The
put
one I
yellow.
highlighted, read the
Yeah.
entire decision, read my highlighted version, read it whatever you want, but please read
Right,
that.
I understand where you were going with them, parts of that, yeah.
And there's a couple cases, Christopher versus Father's Huddle Cafe, I'll write it down for you, it's a 2003 case, which talks about foreseeability, and there's a Shooters Cafe Quincy case, 2012, that talks about foreseeability. It talks about the law of foreseeability, and it spells it out. And it's something, and this is right on point, this case.
Okay.
And I'd ask you to read the rules and regulations, and our opinion is they're vague and ambiguous, and the fact of 40 hours per week or all the time, asked to look at supervision number C, and,
Right.
no offense to anyone who wrote them or adopted them, but for someone to look at that, I'm an attorney, I looked at it, I think it's vague and ambiguous, that's my opinion. I'd like you guys to just look at that and see how you interpret that, and if something is vague and ambiguous, it's unenforceable in the law. So I'd just like you to consider that, that's all. Thank you.
Does anyone have anything that they want to ask or say at this time? Could you, are those references to those cases, are they in that decision?
Yes,
Because I
Christopher's Huddle is in the decision. There's other cases in the decision. We can just, all you have to do is Google it and you'll find it immediately.
Yeah, I got it.
And the Shooters Cafe is a 2012 case. It's an ABCC case. If you just Google Shooters Cafe versus City of Quincy, 2012, you'll find that one, and that's, talks
Okay.
about foreseeability. And that's on point as well, in my opinion.
What happened at the Shooters Cafe in Quincy in 2012?
That was the foreseeability of, that was an altercation, and was it foreseeable?
Was that when the man was killed?
Yes, yes. So was the
By-
prior, was the prior, and the bar was found to have no liability on that, even though that was a serious case. So I'd like you to read it, that's all.
All right. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Actually, my son was the prosecutor on that case.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. Ironic as that might be.
I know your son now. I know your son. We need to talk about this.
Okay, well, so our next meeting is October 3rd.
Yeah, Brian will not be here though, he'll be in Florida, he had to drive his.
Okay. There'll be 4 of us here. The other possibility would be to wait until the
17th.
17th.
And then it's
I mean,
reset.
we've been waiting since January 6th.
Well, that's your call. I mean,
You want it?
It's up to you, you guys. Whatever you want
Are
to
you
do.
guys available on the 3rd?
Whatever you want to do.
Maybe if you have some concern.
All right, it'll
Was it October 3rd or November?
October 3rd.
October 3rd or 17th.
Yeah.
I'm just putting up, just, I know the 17th I'm unavailable. I'm just
Okay, well,
putting up
why don't we say the 3rd then?
Yeah, let me just,
Because I have to talk to you, I might have a problem.
I'll make myself available if I'm in town.
On the 3rd, okay, and we'll do it at the beginning of the meeting.
I can look at it right now.
So can we?
That's fine. Thank you.
You may be time.
What?
You may be time.
For the 17th, 3rd I'll be fine.
Can we hold on to the logbook, make copies, and return the logbook?
They hold on
I
to your
think that
log.
may be the most efficient way to do it.
Yeah, that's fine.
What?
We-
Oh, we'll hold on and make copies, sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can do that
Want me to do
tomorrow
that,
and
or-
return it.
Do you want to do it, or you want to take it to somebody else?
Okay, so we'll resume this here.
Tell you, make copies and one of you all come down and step in the pub and come say hello. Might be a first.
Well,
26 years.
Yeah, the last time I was there, it was called Nico's.
Yeah.
All right, so October 3rd, we'll resume this hearing, and we'll hopefully put it to bed. Thank you very much.
I will provide the acknowledgements once I receive them from Attorney Flanagan, and they can be part of your packet for that night, see how many it is.
Okay. Okay, I don't think there's any other business before us tonight, is there? It's a motion to adjourn is in order.
Second.
All those in favor?
Chairman, I didn't make the connection.